to talk about the next wave of cloud communications. What's coming? What trends do we see? What's happening to see? One of the things that we're seeing happen a lot, we work with a lot of telcos, a lot of service providers, and one of the things that we're seeing happen a lot is a shift in thinking about how to do communications and whether or not to allow cloud and whether or not to work with cloud in their operations. So cloud is changing. When cloud first started becoming a thing and people started using it, the conventional wisdom was that cloud was best suited for greenfield projects, for new technologies, new workloads, not connecting any of your legacy stuff in there. Rather than taking your data centers that you already have, I'm doing something new, let me do something new in cloud. And one of the reasons for that was the potential for the security issues. There was a lot of questions about privacy, about performance, about how do I secure my data? If I'm throwing my stuff over here to this other cloud provider, what happens to it? And so by taking newer workloads and running it there, that was an area that helped with that. What we're seeing now, though, is a shift toward taking existing workloads into the cloud, taking things that you're already doing and finding ways to shift them into the cloud. We're also seeing clouds being used for hybrid cloud and premises, so using both together, and it's not one or the other, but parts of the workload will be on cloud, parts of the workload will be on premises. And maybe that's for burst type usage, where I have a regular usage. When I have a spike, I'll move the spike out to the cloud. Or maybe that's just simply to take, I'd like to run a lot of things in cloud for the benefit, but some of those concerns that I had about data privacy, data security, I need to keep some of that data, some of that workload in close. And then the other thing that we're seeing is a desire to work with existing investments in your on-premises equipment. So not just going full cloud or full in-house, but being able to take, I have all this stuff over here that I've already invested in. How do I connect that up to the cloud? How do I continue leveraging that investment that I have there? So some of those traditional barriers that are causing that, quality of service is a big one, especially when we're talking about communications. Telcos, service providers have thought for a long time that, well, quality of service, if you have any sort of jitter problems, you have dropped calls, it's going to kill it. We have to have very, very high quality of service. Another barrier that's happened is privacy and security, whether that's data privacy, being able to, who am I calling, what am I calling, what's the contents of my call, what's the metadata of the call, how do I handle that communications in a private and secure way. And then another barrier is those legacy investments. Organizations have looked at it and said, I have sunk so much cost into my existing communications infrastructure. I just bought a PBX system and just deployed 100,000 phones across the desktop, across my enterprise. I can't move to cloud because I've just bought all this, I've just spent all this money on this. So what is driving businesses toward those next generation cloud services? Well, first, let's talk a little bit about the business model behind cloud. And if you've been doing cloud for a while, a lot of this is going to be old hat to you. But one of the things that is really changing in business is collaboration needs are increasing. Workforces are becoming distributed. People are moving out. As I mentioned earlier before a lot of these people came in, Jason's not here today. And so I'm filling in because I'm more charming, better looking, and more intelligent than Jason. And I hope this is recorded so I can play that to him and let him know later.
It is recorded.
Excellent. So as workforces become more distributed, both within Alan's got a Sharpie. High tech, awesome. So that is one of the things that's driving, that's changing the business model. Because of the changing workforce and the more distribution of the workforce and the need to work and collaborate more with external partners and customers instead of just internally, there's a need to add a lot more flexibility and ease of management. And then global markets, global competition is driving a lot of this change. So it's requiring IT to really kind of come up with competitive advantages through innovation. And how do I help a organization, how do I help my organization compete better on this global scale, this distributed scale, while still maintaining the security, the privacy, the manageability that I have when I'm working at a smaller scale. Forbes Insights did a survey a while back where they said that collaborating in the cloud, leaders in large companies feel that collaborating in the cloud provides them an enormous advantage. They feel that this is a competitive advantage over companies who do not use cloud communications and collaborate in the cloud. So the business case for the cloud, business case for cloud communication is very similar to the business case for cloud data centers, data processing, SaaS applications. It's deploying and scaling your solutions, enabling mobility, freeing up your IT to be able to do other things rather than just manage your applications. So, the three things that are really driving a lot of cloud movement. Reducing complexity, bringing in evergreen features, being able to say, once I've deployed a communications product, I don't want that to be a static deployment. I want my communications product to be, keep wanting to walk this way and I'm not mic'd this way. And I know you can hear me, but I'm afraid the video can't, so I'll hide behind the podium over here. So being able to take, so the IT organization being able to say, once I deploy that, those phone systems and that communication system, I want that to be evergreen. I want new features as they become available to be available automatically on my system. I don't want to have to keep doing a new rollout of the product every so often. I don't want to have to keep buying new devices, new technology over and over and over again. Also, administration and being able to centrally administer these types of users, usage, monitoring, and being able to have central administration across the enterprise. And then also being able to have new users come on without complex onboarding. If everything is software and everything is in the cloud, I don't need to ship you something. I don't need to install something on your desktop. I don't need to put a phone physically on your desk. I can simply say, here it is in the cloud. This is your software. This is your account. Here's how everything works. Reducing costs, so the typical stair step of on-premises equipment, you have a certain amount of capacity. As you need more capacity, you have to buy a lot more capacity, and you've got this stair step where you're spending a lot of money. Whereas in the cloud, your workload is more flexible. You've got a operational expense instead of a capital expense, and you're able to spend only what you're actually using. And then the ability to deploy solutions very, very quickly based on business demand, have less complex application and service deployment, delivery, and creation, and being able to enable all of this on mobile through taking on the trend of BYOD, and people are bringing in their own smartphones, their own tablets, their own communications devices and tools. How do I enable that within my organization? And that's one of the things that's driving that cloud communications. So telcos, service providers out there, 5 years ago, so Tropo, we've been working with telcos for quite some time. Our product has been something that carriers have been buying for the last several years to build applications and services within their own network, build new products within their own network, and then also expose APIs and expose their core networks out to developers. What we make is software that makes it easy for web developers to connect to a communications system. So telcos buy that to allow their developers, whether it's internal or external, to do the same thing. So what we saw 5 years ago with telcos, everything had to be hosted internally. You go to a telco and you say, I have a cloud API that you can use, and they say, that's great, how do I run it on my servers? Well, it's a cloud API. Okay, I have a cloud, I can put it on my servers. So everything had to be hosted internally. Quality of service was one of the top concerns and would come up often before regulatory concerns would with telcos. Uptime fear. They were terrified of any sort of blip having any sort of downtime and outage. Data privacy is a big one, making sure that the information that goes into the telco, whether it is who called who or the contents of the call, is kept private and secure while still allowing them to support regulatory needs like legal intercept. And telcos were very, very slow moving. It took, because of all of these fears and all of these things, you say, I'd like to deploy this in your cloud. I'd like to deploy this, and we were going to build this. And they say, okay, we have to put it in our cloud. And 6 months later, they're still trying to figure out where their cloud is. So this is changing a lot. So the newer telco is deploying a lot of things on cloud services. We're seeing a huge shift toward telcos, large and small, deploying a lot more in cloud services. Some of that is internal products and things that they're building internally, some internal clouds that they're deploying. Most of these today are not core workloads. We're not seeing core services like voice, text going over these clouds. Those are usually still deployed on some of the traditional systems. We're seeing external clouds being used for some smaller tactical things. They're more willing to reach out to outside APIs, to outside cloud services, and connect to those. They're more willing to deal with providers that are not traditional telco providers and buy services from software companies, whether it's VMware, Ubuntu, and being able to bring those in where they weren't. Before it was I had to buy everything from Alcatel-Lucent or Ericsson or Huawei or one of the big telco providers. And we're also seeing a strong desire to move into WebRTC to provide new services and to provide those primarily in the cloud. So at Cisco, we're also experiencing a shift toward the cloud. Now, Cisco, we've historically sold boxes, networking gear, routers. We've also historically sold on-premises software like WebEx. You buy it, you install it in your network, and you run it there. And we still do. We still sell a lot of the same software and a lot of this same hardware. It's still a gigantic part of Cisco's businesses. But we've now started selling a lot of things that are cloud and deploying things that are cloud only. Spark, Cisco Spark, is our new collaboration tool, and you can't get a copy of Cisco Spark for your premises. I don't care how big you are, how much money you have, how much money you offer. It is only offered in the cloud. Now, going and switching entirely to cloud would be a terrifying thing for a company the size of Cisco. We have, not only do our customers have massive investments in our hardware, our software, our on-premises gear, but our sales channel, our support, everything about the company has this huge, huge investment in on-premises stuff. So one of the things that we're doing is we're working toward hybrid clouds and being able to enable things in cloud but connect back to your enterprise. So a Cisco Spark endpoint will talk to your existing telepresence systems inside your office. It'll work with your existing phone systems. It works with your existing networking gear and routing gear. And so that's one of the places that we're pushing not just our customers, but we're also seeing happen out in the marketplace where rather than go all in on cloud, look at places where you can tie that back to your own, your existing premise and your existing infrastructure. So some of the drivers for moving to this and moving to cloud communications and what's driving both Cisco to make this shift and what's driving our customer base to make this shift. So collaboration for a mobile world is a huge, huge driver. And so some of the things that happen there, your mobile is always on. The mobile world, mobile communications is always on. Presence was a big, big deal back in the 90s and early 2000s. Everything had to have presence. Your phones had to know when you were there, when you weren't. Well, now if it's always on and it's push notifications to your device and you're always seeing it, what does presence mean now? Just because I'm not sitting at my desk, am I not there? Am I not available? So that shift to always on is a big change that's driving a lot of the cloud communications, cloud collaboration. The consumerification of communications is a big change as well. And this means integrated content, rich experiences. So consumers, your employees are sitting out there, you're used to using things like WhatsApp and Line and GroupMe to use to do their communications. And those tools allow you to do things like, here's my location, let me share my location right in here. Let me drop a link in here and it expands and it shows you, oh, it was a link to a picture, so I'm going to show you the picture in here, or a snippet of the web page. So these, I give you a YouTube video, and instead of clicking on the YouTube video and going over and viewing it, play that YouTube video right inside the environment. And so these integrated rich experiences are also driving a lot of companies to look at cloud communications as a way of using this. There's also this rise of shadow IT that's happening, and it's been happening for many years. You look at your PCs got into the workplace because people brought them in. Mobile phones, tablets, laptops, all these things ended up in the workplace. But one of the things that's happening now with this rise of consumer communications and collaborations tools that are frankly much better than a lot of the communications and collaborations tools that your employees are using and have today is they gravitate toward those, they move toward those, they start communicating outside of the tools and the controls of your organization. And one of the things that's also working with that is the need for external collaboration. So your employee says, oh, I need to talk to this customer. I've got this internal chat tool, but they can't use it. Only internal people are allowed to get to that. So what do? I say, well, what's your Skype ID? Can I talk to you on Skype? Hey, let me add you on WhatsApp and we'll talk there. And it shifts those communications outside of that. And it's terrifying to IT because now you don't have the data security, the confidentiality, the types of things that you would need to do to make sure that you're doing business legally and in a legal way. The ease of use and the consumer feel of these tools is one of the things that's also driving customers to those shadow tools. Instead of using this big, hard-to-use system that has hardly any features and I've got to be logged onto the corporate VPN to use, well, I'm just going to open up Skype. I'm just going to go and open up an instant messaging program and have a chat that way. We're seeing customers that see this coming, they want to address this, and they're looking for solutions on how they're going to tame this. So IT organizations and companies and service providers understand that there's benefits to cloud. They don't look at that list of cloud benefits and go, oh, well, none of that matters. I don't care about that. The reason they're not making that shift and haven't historically made that shift is because they need to mitigate the risks along with that. They see all those risks about quality assurance, about privacy, and how do I prevent those from happening? So one of the things that needs to happen if you want to bring cloud communications into your organization, if you want to push cloud communications in the marketplace, is you need to make IT feel safe. You need to make the IT users feel like this is a safe way of doing things, this is something that they can handle. You need to give them manageability. You need to give them the ability to manage the users, to manage the interactions, to comply with legal regulations, to be able to easily add and remove users, to deactivate users, to integrate with other tools. If your communication system doesn't talk to your calendar, to your, I need to send a calendar invite to somebody and invite them in to have a call, and I'm going to use a communication system. Well, if it's not easily and tightly integrated where I can just look and see what calendar invite's going and where do I meet, they may find that switching over and using to another tool and slipping back into their old habits and using a consumer tool is easier for them. But when you're looking at integration, a lot of companies are looking at this and saying, well, we integrate with our Active Directory and we integrate with the Outlook calendar and we integrate with our corporate data structure and all of the communications is there. You need to make sure your users care. You need to do it in a way that users care about it. Is the content that they're trying to share, is the things that they're trying to do, is that the same stuff that you're integrating into your communications workflow? And then it's important as you're deploying this and as you're pushing this that you push ways to work with their on-premise investments. They've already have these sunk costs. They already have phones and networking gear and directory services and all of these things, and you can't just say, let's move all of this out to the cloud and we'll throw all that away. You've spent the last 15 years rolling this out and deploying this and perfecting it. we're just going to toss all that aside and move on to something else. You also need to make sure that you are able to integrate these communications tools into the business processes of the organization. If using a tool requires somebody to change how they work, they will not use the tool. I don't care how good the tool is, I don't care how many mandates you give and what incentives you give. If it makes it more difficult for somebody to do their work, they're not going to use it. So you need to make sure that the existing business process and the ways that users use things is integrated into that. And consider those business processes, consider the daily workflow of your users as an investment that's already is there and that you need to leverage and build into. And one of the drivers that is exciting to people, both the consumers and the customers that you're going to be going out and pushing this to, is the ability to have fast iterations. And one of the things that we're seeing drive this desire to say, okay, well, QoS maybe isn't as important because instead being able to have these nice consumer features is more important. The ability, people are using Skype just fine even though it drops a call every once in a while. Maybe I don't need to have my UC system be 100% reliable all the time at the exclusion of everything else. And so by pushing things out to the cloud and getting that sort of an evergreen system where you're constantly upgrading and constantly updating and constantly adding new features, as communications tools out there get some new whiz-bang feature, next month, WhatsApp comes out with the system that allows you to automatically teleport to somebody else's house and location. You don't have to say, oh, well, that'll have to wait for the next software rollout. We'll roll that out in 6 months, and we'll start deploying that and getting that out there. Because you're deploying all of this over the cloud, you can manage a cloud rollout where you can respond much more quickly to those. View consumer communications tools and consumer collaboration tools as a threat to your enterprise. Those tools and people using those, your IT services are viewing that as a threat. So if you take that same view when you're planning on deploying this and think, how do I respond to that threat? They're a competitor. Skype is a competitor to your desk phones. WhatsApp is a competitor to your instant messaging and your email system. So view it that way and respond quickly using cloud. Because when you're cloud deployed, it means a faster upgrade cycle. Now, by looking at things, comparing those fast iterations and the consumerification and the thinking that maybe QoS isn't as important as these iterations, maybe all the security needs and all the things you were thinking were important, you run the risk of saying, well, I'll build something that matches that, but I'm going to take forever to build it. I'm going to build it, I'm going to get it out, it's going to be perfect, I'm going to get everything perfect, and I'm going to ship it. And then you end up with something like RCS. You've got RCS out there solving last decade's problems. They're solving the problems that consumer communications and collaborations tools were solving 10 years ago. And instead, if that's the type of thing that you're looking at pushing and looking at rolling out, if you're looking at rolling out something that was stale 5 years ago, 6 months ago, a year ago to your customers, they're going to immediately look at continuing to use the consumer tools that they're already using. So some of the trends that we see in cloud communications. API everything. Everything gets an API and attached to it. So in telcos especially, in service providers, we're seeing these sorts of trends happen. It started with support services. So payments was an early one that telcos would roll out the ability to do payments. Location services, where's a phone, where's that? They didn't really start out by saying, hey, I'm going to API enable my core services. Like, you can't get an API to get a telephone or get a telephone number, or an API to make a telephone call, or an API to interact with a telephone call that's between two people that are having a conversation. But we're seeing a trend happen recently where these are moving, the APIs that are being enabled are being moved closer to the core. TruePhone has provisioning APIs where you can provision phone numbers and SIM cards and alter how your phone works and handle all of that. And that's a core service that they're offering. Call control, we have a product called Tropo Connect that allows you to interact with a live telephone call between two subscribers, and we're seeing telcos take this up and pick this up so that they can start building those out. Security is a big trend that we're seeing and a concern for security. So as people move out to the cloud, and as they start moving all of these calls, all these communications out to the cloud, how to secure those is a big question. Data privacy, encryption, data breaches. So it seems like every week there's a new data breach that's happened somewhere where a bunch of consumer data has been taken. A government agency's had a bunch of their constituent data taken. I'm waiting for my credit monitoring from the Target hack just ran out. So my free credit monitoring's over. I'm waiting for the next company to get hacked so I can get another year of free credit monitoring. So being able to take that type of and respond to that and be able to handle and make sure that the data that people are entrusting to you, their communications data, which is very, very sensitive, can contain sensitive personal information, competitive information, corporate information, being able to make sure that that is secure. Encryption is a big method of doing that, and encrypting all of the data, encrypting everything, making sure that you have a good story for how that data is encrypted. If your stuff is coming out to the cloud, if people are sending your data out to the cloud, how do you make sure that that data isn't available to anyone else in the event that you do have a data breach and somebody gets in? So like one of the things that that Spark does is it has the capability, everything is encrypted. Everything's encrypted in the cloud. There is no plain text in the cloud. And one of the options that customers can have is they own the keys. The key server sits in the customer location. The client requests the keys directly from the key server, and the key never passes into our network. So we couldn't see it if we wanted to. We couldn't see it if there was a government action. We couldn't see it if some unfriendly government came and subpoenaed us and wanted it. If somebody hacks in, we still can't see it. Thinking about ways, and that's one of the places where you can take that hybrid cloud on-premises approach and bring them together. So hybrid services allow you to balance between balance the capabilities that you're providing based on how people want to use them. Some people want to use an on-premise service. Some people, I want to use my desk phone. I want to pick up my phone. I've got this hard endpoint here and I want to use it. How do I connect that with the cloud, and how do I work that with the cloud? Does that connect out maybe to a cloud communications UC system? Does that connect to my, when I pick up the phone, can I talk to people that are in my collaboration app like Spark or something like that? The reason why you want to do that, investment protection is a big one. You go out to your customers and you say, all that money you've been spending the last 10 years, well, throw that out, start all over again, invest this now. First, they're not going to want to do it. Secondly, it's going to make it a lot harder for you to get them to do that spend a second time. You just convinced us to do this spend. Now you're telling us that spend's the old spend the new money. Unless you're a consultant, telling them that what you did last week isn't valid anymore and you need to do something else, that's not going to work. Consultants get away with that all the time, though, to all the consultants in the room. I've got glares coming at me from Warren and Alan there. Providing more relevant services to people that demand them. Not all of your constituents, not all of your customers, not all of your employees are going to want these newfangled communications collaboration systems. Some of them are just fine with picking up the phone. I mean, think about just in the consumer world. You may be using something like WhatsApp all the time to communicate, and then you've got those two friends that are always just using SMS and texting you, and you can't get them to move over to it. So being able, by providing hybrid services and keeping these things connected, you're enabling people to use the devices, the systems, the tools they want to use when they want to use them without forcing them to move into something else. So you're also able to, one of the things that we found is that when we do bring cloud services in, our customers find that they're gaining a lot of synergies between what they're getting and what they already have. It's making their existing stuff better. We look for ways to not just say we're going to replace the service that you're using right now and we're going to move it to the cloud, but what can we do in the cloud that's different that we couldn't do when it was on premises? Maybe that's federation, maybe that's external collaboration, maybe that's higher bandwidth calls or bursting capacity, things that can happen that you couldn't do when you brought something in. And then we're also seeing a focus on features over quality of service or stability or ubiquity. You can have the most stable telco service, communication service that everybody has access to, and if nobody's using it, it's not doing any good. Who cares if something works all the time if nobody wants to use it? So bringing the features in and focusing on features and relaxing things like quality of service and realizing that as a telco, look, my customers are flocking to these other voice over IP services, chat services that maybe you don't have 100% uptime, but they're okay with that because the benefit that they're getting when it is up and for the vast majority of the time it's up is much higher than the value that they're losing for the few moments that it may be down or inaccessible. So that's what we're seeing at Cisco. That's the trends that we're seeing happen in communications and how communications is growing and how you can take advantage of it. Anybody have any questions at all? There's a mic over here if you do. There's a mic over here if you don't. It'll still be there. You can kick off, like usual.
In order to get maximum value out of these cloud-based services, you really need to embed them into existing network operators. I know that Tropo has had a lot of experience in this area. Would you like to comment on how difficult it is to actually get embedded into?
Well, we've been trying to embed into your network for a year now, so that's pretty difficult. Yeah, so the question is how difficult the question is you have to embed these into existing network operators and how difficult it is to do so. I think the first thing is to question the premise that you have to. There's a lot of people that are doing these things without embedding in network operators. There are advantages to embedding in network operators, certainly. The way to get network operators to embrace these is to get them to understand things like, they already understand that they're losing customers to the likes of WhatsApp. What they're having trouble understanding is that building what WhatsApp was 5 years ago isn't the solution to competing against this. So the way to convince a network operator to start using these services is to help them understand what systems, what core values that they have that they are uniquely positioned to offer, whether that is a billing relationship with every person in the world, whether that is a network that has reach that's available across the world that I don't need to hop to different Wi-Fi points, whether that's the identity that telcos have among most of their users, not all, but most, knowing who that user is and being able to tie to that identity. Over here, Dean? And I can repeat it for the video. Okay.
Firstly, I completely agree with the QoS argument. Apart from anything else, people are going to be using the apps on third-party Wi-Fi somewhere between 50 to 90% of the time anyway. So managing QoS on the other 10 to 50% doesn't really seem worth it. Question though is, do you see cloud communications being, if you like, horizontal services like work stream collaboration, or do you see more tailoring to particular requirements? So there's the law firm communications app with embedded cloud comms. There's the oil industry communications app, the one that's aimed at doctors and medical staff. How specific are we going to get?
I think you'll see a lot of both. So if you look at any class of application, there's a horizontal, covers the broad use case, most people can use it, but then there will be very specific vertical applications that target a specific segment of an industry. There's IVR providers out there that you create an automated voice system and you build this voice system and you can build it for any industry. There's also IVR providers that have created a very specific IVR experience already designed for certain industries. You're an insurance company, you can buy this IVR that's already integrated into your workflow and what you do. So it depends on what the customer needs and what the consumer wants to use. If the law firm has very specific needs to to the legal industry, then we'll see applications rise up that are targeted to those. I don't see those being service providers building those, except maybe for huge verticals like healthcare. You'll see small startups that build things on top of these, and that's one of the places where APIing all of the things helps. If I'm a startup and I can not have to build my own identity and billing and payments and core voice and all of that, but I can utilize something that a service provider and an operator has already deployed and created to build a specific vertical, I can attack that in a much more efficient manner than an operator can by doing it themselves.
So you commented on giving up on quality of service over having more feature content. Can you please comment on regulatory requirements for service, tier 1 service providers in general, because they may be penalized if some certain quality of service or reliability measurements are not met?
Right.
And do you see any changes in that area?
So I don't think that, I'm not saying you give up entirely on quality of service. I'm saying that it is not the idol that you should bow down to, and it's not the most important thing. Your users don't care about it. For the most part, your users don't care. You do have users that do care. You have constituents that do care. Emergency services care about quality of service. They don't care about the quality of the voice. They care that it's up all of the time. So you can deploy systems that are designed for them. Emergency services, an ambulance isn't going to go off and use WhatsApp because they can share cat pictures in the application. So if you're deploying a communication service that's designed for an emergency service, and that's one of those verticals where deploying a network designed for that, and that happens all the time today where certain networks are built for that. But when you start looking at what the regulatory requirements are, operators are already, tier 1 operators and lower tier operators are already pushing things like Wi-Fi offload of calling. They're already pushing things like taking femtocells and small cells that are connected over the internet where they don't control that last mile. You can only provide a perfect quality of service if you control the entire line. And once you realize that you no longer control the entire communications line, you can free yourself up to think about quality of service in a different way and to think about where it fits in your product features and your priority, rather than just being, we must have quality of service all the time. Anything else? Well, excellent. Well, I'll be around for the rest of the conference and floating around. So if you do have any questions or want to talk about what we're doing or what you're doing and where we see that going, feel free to grab me. Thanks.